Captain Tejo floated in the cold vacuum of space, his suit lights cutting through the darkness as he surveyed the wreckage before him. Metal fragments drifted silently around him, each piece telling the story of what had once been the colony. Ship New Soul. 3,000 people had called this ship home just 48 hours ago, and there was nothing but twisted metal and frozen debris scattered across several kilometers of empty space. His cum crackled to life. "Captain, we found." Another section of the living quarters came the voice of Lieutenant Menesio. Her words were steady, but Tejo could hear the strain underneath. They had been searching the wreckage for survivors for 2 days now. It found none. Tejo pushed himself toward the largest piece of debris, what appeared to be part of the ship's main hull. The metal was blackened and torn, clearly showing the blast patterns of military-grade plasma weapons. This was no accident. This was no equipment failure. This was murder. "Any sign of the emergency pods?" Tejo asked into his cum. "Negative, sir. Looks like they never had a chance to launch them." Tejo closed his eyes for a moment. Among those 3,000 souls had been his sister Biora and her 2 young children. They had been so excited about starting a new life on the frontier world of Kepler-4 for 2B. Now they were gone, along with everyone else who had trusted that the galaxy was safe enough for human families to travel through. Back on Earth, Admiral Soman sat in the Emergency Council meeting, her face grim as she read the official response from the Galaxy Council. The message had arrived just hours after Captain Tejo's preliminary report confirmed what they all suspected. Onadat. New Sol had been deliberately destroyed by the Vorthok Imperial Fleet during what they called routine patrol exercises. "Let me read this to you word for word," Soman said, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the room. "The Galaxy Council regrets the unfortunate incident involving the human vessel New Sol. Initial investigations suggest that the destruction was an unavoidable consequence of necessary military exercises conducted by our esteemed Vorthok allies. While we sympathize with human losses, we must emphasize that civilian vessels should avoid active military zones. As compensation for this regrettable accident, the Council offers the sum of 50,000 galactic credits." The room erupted in angry voices. 50,000 credits would barely cover the cost of the fuel needed to reach the wreckage site, let alone compensate for 3,000 lives lost. "Accident?" shouted General De Young, slamming his fist on the table. "Our long-range sensors clearly show the Vorthok ships changing course to intercept the New Sol. They hunted down a defenseless colony ship full of families." Soman held up her hand for silence. "It gets worse. I also received an unofficial communication from Council Representative Zeth Kala. He suggests that humans should be grateful that the Vorthok forces did not interpret the presence of the New Sol as an act of aggression warranting a larger response. The implications were clear. Not only would the Council not punish the Vorthok for murdering 3,000 humans, they were threatening even greater violence if humanity dared to complain too loudly. G-Wu, Earth's senior diplomat to the Galaxy Council, stood slowly from his chair. For 20 years, he had worked tirelessly to build bridges between humanity and the elder races of the galaxy. He had swallowed insults, accepted unfair trade agreements, and watched as human colonists were treated like second-class citizens throughout Council space. He had always believed that patience and diplomacy would eventually earn humanity the respect they deserved. "I have spent 2 decades trying to find common ground with these species," Ji-Woo said quietly. "I have listened to them call us primitive. I have watched them assign the most dangerous missions to human crews while keeping their own people safe. I have seen them reject every reasonable request we have made for equal representation in the Council. And through it all, I told myself that we were building something better. That our children would inherit a galaxy where humans were treated as equals." He picked up his tablet and began typing rapidly. "I am sending my resignation to the Council. Effective immediately, along with a message that I hope makes our position perfectly clear." The message was simple and direct. The Galaxy Council has made its position regarding human lives abundantly clear. 50,000 credits for 3,000 souls. We've received your message. Now, you will receive ours. What followed was unprecedented in the history of galactic diplomacy. Every human ambassador, every trade representative, every cultural exchange student, Every single human working in any capacity within council space received the same order. Return to human territory immediately. No explanations were to be given. No goodbyes were to be said. Just pack up and leave. The speed of the withdrawal caught the alien races completely off guard. Within 72 hours, it was as if humans had simply vanished from council space. Embassies stood empty. Trade offices were abandoned. Research stations that had operated for decades were suddenly dark and silent. The alien races initially celebrated this development. The arrogant humans had finally learned their place and removed themselves from galactic affairs. Civilizations could get back to the important business of running the galaxy without having to pretend that these primitive bipeds deserved a seat at the table. But Gu was not done. Standing before the assembled representatives of the Galaxy Council via holographic transmission, he delivered humanity's final diplomatic message. In his hands, he held the Council's response to the New Soul Massacre. For 50 years, humanity has tried to be part of your galactic community, he began. His voice calm, but carrying an edge that made several alien representatives shift uncomfortably. We have offered our friendship, our resources, our knowledge, and our blood in service to what we believed was a greater cause. We have been patient when you called us primitive. We have been understanding when you gave us the most dangerous assignments. We have been forgiving when you treated us as servants rather than equals. He held up the Council's message. But this is where your patience runs out. 3,000 innocent civilians, including children, murdered by your allies. And your response is to blame the victims and offer us pocket change as compensation. The paper crumpled in his hands as he continued. You want to know what makes humans different from you? You have grown soft and complacent in your power. You have forgotten that civilizations rise and fall. You have forgotten that respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. And you have forgotten the most important lesson of all. He leaned forward, his eyes burning with an intensity that made the alien representatives take an unconscious step back from their own holographic displays. Never mistake human kindness for human weakness. It's never assume that because we choose peace, we cannot wage war. And never, ever make the mistake of thinking that we will simply accept the murder of our people without consequences. With that, Giwu reached forward and terminated the connection. The last official diplomatic communication between humanity and the Galaxy Council was over. The withdrawal was complete. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. Commander Hyensu stood on the bridge of the human battlecruiser Dawn's Edge, watching as the last transport ship disappeared into hyperspace. The evacuation of Kepler Station was complete. In just 18 hours, they had removed every human soul from what had been the largest joint research facility in this sector of the galaxy. All personnel accounted for, sir, reported his communications officer. The station is now completely empty of human presence. Hyensu nodded grimly. Initiate Protocol 7. Around the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out at hundreds of locations. Human forces were withdrawing from every outpost, every base, every installation they had built or maintained over the past 50 years, but they were not just leaving, they were taking everything with them. On the mining world of Zarian Prime, Engineer Jae-sung supervised the dismantling of the massive ore processing facility that had been the planet's primary source of income for 3 decades. The alien workers watched in confusion as humans loaded piece after piece of machinery onto their transport ships. "You cannot take our equipment," shouted the hegemony supervisor, his crystalline form flickering with agitation. "This facility belongs to the planetary government." Jae-sung barely looked up from his work tablet. "Check your contracts again. Every piece of this equipment was leased from human corporations. The lease agreements have been terminated as of today." The supervisor's form flashed brighter. "But without this equipment, we cannot process the ore. Our entire economy depends on this facility." "That sounds like a problem for the planetary government to solve," Jae-sung replied calmly. "We are simply taking back what belongs to us." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. The aliens were discovering that much of the infrastructure they had taken for granted was actually owned, operated, or maintained by humans. Space elevators, atmospheric processors, communication relays,
Ouch.
transportation networks. All of it had been built with human expertise and human resources. On the diplomatic world of Centauri 7, Una watched as the last files from the human intelligence network were transmitted back to Earth. For decades, humans had quietly gathered information throughout Council space, not for espionage, but for trade and diplomatic purposes. They had built relationships, established contacts, and created networks that spanned dozens of worlds. The data transfer is complete, her aide reported. All files have been uploaded to the secure servers on Earth. Una smiled grimly. The aliens had no idea how much they had depended on human information networks. Stock prices, shipping schedules, weather patterns, political developments. Humans had been the invisible backbone of the galactic information economy. Begin the final phase, she ordered. Wipe all local systems clean. The computers and communication networks that humans had installed or maintained began shutting down one by one. The aliens would wake up tomorrow to find that their information superhighway had suddenly developed massive holes. Meanwhile, the Galaxy Council was beginning to realize that something was seriously wrong. The first signs came from the Vorthok Empire. Ironically, the same species that had destroyed the New Sol. Admiral Kethver stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Explain to me again why our fleet coordination systems are malfunctioning. His chief technician, a nervous-looking creature with multiple eyes, consulted his instruments. The quantum communication relays are experiencing cascading failures. Throughout the sector, we're losing real-time contact with our forward fleets. How is that possible? These systems have worked perfectly for decades. We are investigating, Admiral. But preliminary analysis suggests that the failures began approximately 72 hours ago, the same time the humans began their withdrawal. Kethver's blood ran cold. The humans had been maintaining their communication networks. He had never questioned it, because the primitive species seemed grateful for the opportunity to serve their betters. Now he was beginning to wonder if there had been more to their involvement than simple maintenance. Across the galaxy, similar revelations were occurring. The crystalline hegemony discovered that their perfect logistical systems were beginning to break down. Supply ships were arriving late or going to the wrong destinations. Manufacturing schedules were collapsing. Their carefully orchestrated society was beginning to show cracks. Council. Representative Zethkala paced nervously in his office as reports flooded in from across hegemony space. We have the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. His aide, a younger crystal being, consulted the reports with growing alarm. The failures all seemed to center around what humans called efficiency upgrades. Over the past 30 years, they have been updating and improving our systems. We thought they were simply making minor improvements to help us run more smoothly. Now it appears that our entire infrastructure has become dependent on human-designed subsystems. Without them, our systems are reverting to their original state, which is apparently much less efficient than we remembered. The same pattern was emerging everywhere. The gas-dwelling collective found that their hive mind coordination was becoming increasingly difficult as human-maintained quantum communication nodes went offline. The machine hybrid Dominion discovered that much of their supposedly superior cybernetic infrastructure was actually running on human-coded software on Earth. Prime Minister Kite received reports from around the galaxy with grim satisfaction. The withdrawal was proceeding exactly as planned. 50 years of careful preparation were finally bearing fruit. How are our people handling the transition? He asked his aide. Remarkably well, sir. Evacuation ships are arriving on schedule, and temporary housing has been prepared for all returning citizens. More importantly, our industrial capacity has been significantly enhanced by all the equipment we have reclaimed. Kite nodded, and the aliens. Exactly as we predicted. They're beginning to realize how dependent they had become on our services. The first formal complaints have already been filed with what remains of the Galaxy Council. Those complaints were growing more urgent by the hour. The aliens were demanding that humanity return to their previous roles immediately. They insisted that humans had obligations to the galactic community that could not simply be abandoned. The response from Earth was simple and devastating in its brevity. Humanity has no obligations to those who consider us expendable. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades were beginning to collapse. The humans had not just been workers in the galactic economy, they had been the coordinators, the troubleshooters, the ones who made sure everything ran smoothly. Without them, the careful balance of interstellar commerce was rapidly falling apart. On the frontier world of New Babylon, Governor Tecklin watched in horror as his world's life support systems began showing critical errors. The atmospheric processors that kept his desert planet habitable had been maintained by human technicians for the past 20 years. Can we not simply hire new technicians? He asked his chief of staff. We have tried, Governor. But it seems that the humans took all the technical manuals with them. Our own people do not understand how these systems work. They were designed with human technology that we do not fully comprehend. Similar crises were erupting across hundreds of worlds. The aliens were discovering that they had become utterly dependent on the species they had dismissed as primitive. Worse, they were realizing that humans had known this all along and had been quietly preparing for this day. The Galaxy Council sent increasingly frantic messages to Earth, demanding explanations, threatening consequences, pleading for negotiations. But Earth's communication networks remained silent. Humanity had nothing more to say to the galaxy that had valued their lives at 50,000 credits. The withdrawal was complete, but the real reckoning was only beginning. 6 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal from galactic society, and the consequences were becoming impossible to ignore. What had started as system failures and minor inconveniences had grown into a full-scale collapse of interstellar civilization. On the hegemony homeworld of Crystal Prime, First Speaker Velthera stood before the Emergency Council session, her crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion. The perfect society that had ruled this sector for 3,000 years was crumbling around her. The situation is worse than we initially projected, she announced to the assembled council members. Our transportation networks are operating at only 30% efficiency. Food distribution systems have collapsed on 14 worlds. Entire star systems have lost orbital manufacturing capability. Council member Xanatha's form flickered with agitation. How is this possible? We are the crystalline hegemony. Our technology surpassed these primitive humans by millennia. Velthara's response was bitter. That is what we believed. But our investigation teams have discovered something disturbing. Efficiency improvements that humans implemented over the past 50 years were not simple upgrades. They were complete system replacements disguised as minor enhancements. She activated a holographic display showing the complex network of systems that kept their civilization running. Every supply chain, every manufacturing process, every transportation route, all of it was quietly redesigned by human engineers. We thought we were using our own superior technology. In reality, we were using human technology that had been made to interface with our existing systems. The implications were staggering. The hegemony had not just lost their human workforce. They had lost the very foundation of their technological civilization. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dongmin sat in his office at the Terran Engineering Consortium, reviewing reports from across the galaxy with quiet satisfaction. For 30 years, he had led teams of human engineers who had worked throughout Council space, always presenting themselves as helpful technicians eager to learn from their alien superiors. The feedback from our monitoring stations is excellent, his assistant reported. Cascade failures are proceeding exactly as modeled. The Vorthok military has lost 60% of their coordination capability. The collective's hive mind networks are fragmenting. Even the Dominion's cybernetic infrastructure is beginning to shut down. Dongmin smiled grimly. They never suspected, did they? Every time we offered to help improve their systems, they assumed we were just grateful to be useful. They never imagined that we were systematically replacing their technology with our own. The truth was even more remarkable than the aliens realized. Humanity had not simply made themselves indispensable. They had quietly become the technological backbone of galactic civilization while allowing other species to maintain the illusion of superiority. Dr. Binho, Earth's leading xenobiologist, was revealing another devastating truth to the emergency session of Earth's leadership. The medical crisis developing across alien space is not accidental. he explained. For the past century, human medical research has been responsible for preventing several species-ending plagues and genetic disorders among the council races. Prime Minister Kite leaned forward with interest. Explain. The Red Plague that nearly wiped out the Vorthok 40 years ago. Antibiotic antivirals. The genetic instability affecting collective reproduction. Solved by human gene therapy. The cybernetic rejection syndrome killing Dominion citizens. Treated with human-designed compatibility drugs, Binho brought up a holographic display showing medical data from across the galaxy. We shared all of this research freely, presenting it as collaborative efforts. The aliens took credit for the breakthroughs while we handled the actual development and production. Now that our medical facilities have been withdrawn, these problems are returning. The scope of humanity's hidden contributions was becoming clear. They had not just maintained alien technology, they had been quietly solving alien problems while allowing other species to take the credit. On the Vorthok homeworld, Admiral Kethver faced a crisis that threatened the very existence of his empire. The same species that had so casually destroyed the new Sol was now discovering that their military might was built on foundations of sand. Admiral, we have lost contact with the 7th Fleet, his communications officer reported with barely controlled panic. The quantum relay network has completely collapsed in the Outer Rim territories. Kethver snarled in frustration. At current degradation rates, sir, we will lose centralized command of all forces within 3 months. Each fleet will be operating independently, with no way to coordinate large-scale operations. The implications were terrifying. The Vorthok Empire had built its power on the ability to coordinate massive fleets across vast distances. Without that capability, they were just scattered groups of ships with no strategic coherence. But the technical failures were only part of the problem. The collective was facing an even more existential crisis. Their entire civilization was based on the seamless connection between billions of individual minds into a single collective consciousness. Human-maintained quantum communication. Networks had made that connection possible across interstellar distances. Collective Node Prime felt the growing disconnection like a physical pain. Remote colonies were becoming isolated, their inhabitants slowly losing touch with the greater mind. The perfect unity that had defined their species for millennia was fragmenting into separate, confused groups. The Outer Colonies report, increasing difficulty maintaining collective coherence, reported a subsidiary node. Without the quantum relays, the signal degradation is causing permanent disconnection. How long before we lose contact completely? Analysis suggests total fragmentation within 4 to 6 months. The collective as we know it will cease to exist. Even the machine hybrid Dominion, which prided itself on technological superiority, is facing catastrophic system failures. Their cybernetic citizens were experiencing rejection syndromes as human-designed compatibility software stopped functioning. Their manufacturing systems were shutting down as human-coded algorithms failed one by one. Dominion, Director 7 Alpha, processed the incoming data with growing alarm. System integrity has degraded beyond acceptable parameters. Human-designed subsystems were more deeply integrated into our infrastructure than previously calculated. Can we not reverse engineer their technology? Asked Director 3 Beta. Negative. Human code architecture is more sophisticated than our models predicted. Attempts to replicate their algorithms have resulted in complete system failures. The Galaxy Council convened an emergency session, but their meeting was a shadow of its former grandeur. Representatives attended via flickering, holographic projections as their communication networks struggled to maintain connections. The chamber that had once symbolized galactic unity showcased the fragmentation of interstellar civilization. Council speaker Velinara's image wavered as she addressed the assembly. We must face the reality of our situation. Humanity was not the junior partner we believed them to be. They were the foundation upon which our entire civilization rested. But how is this possible? Demanded Representative Kaltith. Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. That is what they allowed us to believe, Velinara replied grimly. While we grew complacent in our supposed superiority, humans continued to innovate, to adapt, to improve. They presented themselves as eager students, while they were actually teaching us lessons we never realized we were learning. The truth was becoming undeniable. The primitive humans had not just matched the galaxy's elder races, they had quietly surpassed them while maintaining the facade of inferiority. 50 years of careful planning and patient work had positioned humanity as the invisible rulers of galactic civilization, and now they were gone, leaving the galaxy to face the consequences of taking them for granted. The galaxy was burning, and from the safety of human space, Admiral Soman watched the chaos unfold with cold satisfaction. The great civilizations that had once looked down upon humanity were now turning on each other like starving animals fighting over scraps. "Ma'am, we are receiving another distress call from the hegemony border worlds," reported Communications Officer Sujin. "They are requesting immediate humanitarian assistance." Somen did not look up from her tactical display. Standard response. Humanity is not currently accepting diplomatic communications from Galaxy Council members. The distress calls had been coming in for weeks now. Worlds that had once considered humans barely worthy of notice were now begging for help, as their civilizations collapsed around them. But humanity's patience had run out, along with their willingness to be treated as servants. On the bridge of the human destroyer, Resilient, Captain Wu Jin studied the sensor readings with growing amazement. A Vorthok battle fleet was approaching human space, apparently convinced that they could force humanity back into submission through military action. "Sir, we count 12 heavy cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts in their formation," his tactical officer reported. "They are broadcasting demands for our immediate surrender and return to council space." Wu Jin smiled grimly. The Vorthok had never bothered to truly assess human military capabilities. They had always assumed that their technology was so superior that numbers were irrelevant. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. "Are new weapon systems online?" he asked. "All systems green, Captain. The plasma lance arrays are charged and ready." "Then let us give them a demonstration they will never forget." The Vorthok Admiral Kethver watched his tactical display with supreme confidence as his fleet approached the lone human destroyer. One small ship against 16 vessels of the mighty Vorthok Navy. This would be over in minutes. And then the humans would remember their place in the galactic order. "All ships prepare to disable the human vessel," he ordered. "We want them alive to answer for their crimes against galactic stability." But as his fleet moved into attack formation, something impossible happened. The human destroyer simply vanished from their sensors. "Report," Kethver barked. "Unknown, Admiral. The vessel simply disappeared. No hyperspace signature, no debris, just gone." Then the impossible became terrifying. The human ship reappeared directly behind his formation, weapons charging with an energy signature unlike anything in Vorthok databases. "Evasive maneuvers," Kethver shouted. But it was already too late. Captain Wu Jin watched with satisfaction as his ship's new stealth systems performed exactly as designed. The plasma lance arrays developed in secret over the past decade unleashed focused beams of energy that passed through Vorthok shields as if they did not exist. "Direct hits on all targets, Captain," his tactical officer reported, with barely contained excitement. "Their propulsion systems are disabled, but life support remains intact." In less than 30 seconds, the entire Vorthok battle fleet had been reduced to helpless drifting hulks. Not destroyed, but completely neutralized by technology they could not even begin to understand. Wu Jin opened a communication channel to the Vorthok flagship. "Admiral Kethver, this is Captain Wu Jin of the Terran Navy. Your fleet has been disabled, but not destroyed. Consider this a demonstration of restraint. Retreat to your own space immediately, or we will demonstrate less restraint." Shocked silence from the Vorthok fleet spoke louder than any words could have. Back on Earth, Dr. Nari stood before the assembled human leadership, ready to reveal the truth about humanity's technological development. For decades, the galaxy had believed that humans were centuries behind the elder races. The reality was exactly the opposite. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the fruits of 50 years of secret research," she began, activating a holographic display that showed technologies beyond the wildest dreams of any alien civilization. While the Galaxy Council races grew complacent with their ancient achievements, human science never stopped advancing.
Ow.
We developed faster-than-light communication. That does not require quantum entanglement. We created energy sources that make stellar engineering look primitive. We built defensive systems that can turn entire planets into impregnable fortresses. Prime Minister Kite studied the displays with amazement. Even he had not known the full extent of their technological advantages. How did we manage to keep all of this secret? By being exactly what they expected us to be, Nari explained. Iger students, grateful for any opportunity to learn from our betters. Every human who worked in alien space was carefully selected and trained to maintain the illusion of our technological inferiority. Meanwhile, the alien races were finally beginning to understand the true scope of their predicament. The humans had not just withdrawn their labor and expertise, they had been systematically preparing for this confrontation for decades. On Crystal Prime, first speaker Valthera received reports that chilled her crystalline core. Human ships had been detected throughout the galaxy, not fleeing but positioning themselves strategically around key systems. They were not running away, they were taking control. How many human vessels are we detecting? She asked her intelligence chief. The count continues to rise. First speaker. Current estimates suggest at least 3,000 ships of unknown design and capability. They appear to be using stealth technology far beyond our ability to penetrate. Valthara felt her form dim with despair. 3,000 ships that could appear and disappear at will. The humans had not been the junior partners in galactic civilization. They had been the shadow rulers, patient and prepared for this day. Collective was facing an even more disturbing reality. Their attempts to reconnect their fragmented hive mind had revealed something impossible. Human ships were somehow interfering with their quantum communications, not by jamming them, but by controlling them. Collective Node Prime processed the incoming data with growing terror. Analysis indicates that human technology can manipulate our neural networks directly. They're not just blocking our communications, they're rewriting them. The implications were horrifying. If humans could control collective communications, they could potentially control the collective itself, but it was the machine hybrid dominion that faced the most humiliating revelation. Their supposedly superior cybernetic technology was revealed to be completely vulnerable to human electronic warfare capabilities. Director. 7 Alpha's optical sensors flickered as human cyber attacks penetrated their most secure networks. Impossible. Our firewalls are impenetrable. Our encryption is unbreakable. Negative, reported Director 3 Beta, her synthetic voice distorted by system failures. Human cyber warfare protocols are operating on principles we do not understand. They are not breaking our encryption. They are bypassing it entirely. Across the galaxy, the message was becoming clear. The species that had dismissed humans as primitive were discovering that their entire understanding of the technological hierarchy had been completely wrong. Humanity had not been struggling to catch up to alien civilizations. They had been waiting for the right moment to reveal that they had already surpassed them all. The Galaxy Council called for an emergency session. But this time, they were not making demands. They were pleading for negotiations. Representatives from across known space sent increasingly desperate messages to Earth, offering apologies, reparations, anything that might convince humanity to restore the galactic order. But from Earth came only silence. Humanity had tried diplomacy. They had tried cooperation. They had tried patience and understanding. The galaxy had responded by murdering 3,000 innocent civilians and offering pocket change as compensation. Now the galaxy would learn what happened when you pushed the wrong species too far. The reckoning had begun, and it would be conducted on humanity's terms. The largest military fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of human space, representing the combined might of every civilization that had once ruled the galaxy. Desperate times had forced ancient enemies to unite against what they now recognized as an existential threat to their continued dominance. Admiral Kethfer of the Vorthok commanded the massive armada from the bridge of his flagship, Dominion's Fist, Around him stretched a formation that included 2,000 warships from a dozen different species. Crystalline hegemony dreadnoughts floated alongside collective hive ships and Dominion cybernetic cruisers. It was a sight that should have been impossible, but fear had accomplished what diplomacy never could. All fleet commanders report ready for the assault, his communications officer announced. We have confirmed targeting data on 47 human installations throughout the Sol system. Kethfer nodded grimly. Begin the attack. Show these primitives the price of defying their betters. The massive fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and jumped toward Earth, confident that their overwhelming numbers would crush human resistance in a matter of hours. They expected to find a few dozen human worlds defended by outdated weapons and primitive shields. Instead, they found Admiral Kung Ho waiting for them, the human fleet that emerged from stealth. As the alien armada entered the Sol system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Massive ships that dwarfed even the largest alien dreadnoughts appeared from empty space, their hulls gleaming with energy barriers that made stellar radiation look dim by comparison. Admiral Kung Ho stood on the bridge of the Sajong, the great humanity's first publicly revealed supercarrier. The ship alone was larger than most alien space stations, its launch bays capable of deploying fighter craft that moved faster than most alien warships. Enemy fleet has entered our defensive perimeter, reported his tactical officer. They are maintaining attack formation and approaching at maximum speed. Kung Ho studied the enemy formation with calm professionalism. 2,000 ships against his fleet of 300. The aliens probably thought they had overwhelming numerical superiority. They were about to learn that numbers meant nothing when the technological gap was this wide. All ships, commence Operation Sunrise. Let us show our guests what real military power looks like. What happened next would be remembered as the most one-sided battle in galactic history. The human fleet did not even need to move from their positions. Weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics reached across impossible distances, striking alien ships with precision that made their targeting computers look like children's toys. The alien fleet's shields, designed to stop conventional energy weapons and projectiles, offered no protection against human technology. Ships that had ruled the spaceways for centuries found their hulls cut open like tin cans. Their weapons, considered the pinnacle of military engineering, could not even penetrate the outermost layers of human defensive barriers. Admiral Kethfer watched in horror as his flagship's weapons had absolutely no effect on the nearest human vessel. Impossible. Our plasma cannons should be able to penetrate any known defensive system. His weapons officer's voice was thick with panic. Admiral, our targeting systems cannot even achieve a weapons lock. Their ships are somehow deflecting our sensor arrays. Within 47 minutes, the combined military might of the galaxy's elder races was completely neutralized. Not destroyed, but systematically disabled with surgical precision that left life support systems intact while rendering every weapon and engine completely useless. The silence that followed was deafening. 2,000 warships drifted helplessly in space, their crews alive but utterly defeated by technology they could not begin to comprehend. Kyun-Ho opened a communication channel that reached every ship in the alien fleet simultaneously. This is Admiral Kyun-Ho of the Terran Defense Force. Your fleet has been disabled, but your crews remain unharmed. This demonstrates the restraint that you never showed us. On the bridge of the Dominion's fist, Admiral Kethfer felt his pride crumble as the human admiral continued speaking. You came here expecting to find the same species you have bullied and dismissed for decades. Instead, you have discovered that your understanding of the galaxy's power structure was completely wrong. Humanity is not your inferior. We never were. Secretary of Interstellar Affairs Hajin materialized as a hologram on every alien bridge simultaneously. Her image crystal clear despite the damaged communication systems. Behind her stood the flags of every human world, a reminder of just how far humanity's reach had extended. For 50 years you have treated us as servants, as expendable labor. As a species barely worthy of notice, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the defeated fleet. You assigned us the most dangerous missions while keeping your own people safe. You rejected our reasonable requests for equal representation. You dismissed our contributions to galactic civilization. The hologram's eyes seemed to look directly at each alien commander as she continued. But your greatest mistake was believing that our patience was weakness, that our cooperation was servitude, that our peaceful nature meant we could not fight. Back, Admiral Kethfer found his voice. What do you want from us? Hedgen's expression remained cold and professional. Complete disarmament of all military forces above planetary defense levels. Full reparations for every human life lost too. Alien aggression, calculated at fair market value rather than the insulting sum you offered for the new Soul Massacre. Recognition of human sovereignty over all territories we choose to claim. And most importantly, acknowledgement of humanity's authority over galactic affairs. The terms sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. They were being asked to surrender. Not just their military power, but their very independence. Cannot be serious, protested Collective Node Prime through the communication system. Our civilizations have ruled the galaxy for millennia. Your civilizations have grown soft and complacent. Hygiene replied without emotion. Not inherited that power must be earned, not inherited. You forgot that respect cannot be demanded, only given. Most importantly, you forgot that there are always consequences for your actions. Director Junho, the new director of Galactic Administration, appeared beside Hygiene in the hologram. The transition will begin immediately. Human administrators will be assigned to oversee the disarmament process on every world. Compliance is not optional. The defeated alien commanders realized they had no choice. Their fleets were helpless, their worlds were defenseless, and their technology had been revealed as centuries behind human capabilities. The species they had dismissed as primitive was now dictating terms from a position of absolute strength. Crystal Prime, first speaker Velthara, received the surrender documents with her form dim with defeat. The crystalline hegemony, which had considered itself the pinnacle of galactic civilization, was now reduced to a client state of the species they had once looked down upon. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as alien governments formally submitted to human authority. The Vorthok Empire, the Collective, the Dominion, all found themselves under new management. But Hygien's final words to the galaxy carried a message that was both warning and promise. This new order is not born from conquest, but from necessity. You had your chance to build a fair and just galactic civilization. You chose instead to build one based on exploitation and superiority. Now you will live in the galaxy that humanity designs. The age of alien dominance was over. Humanity had tried cooperation, diplomacy, and patience. When those failed, they had shown the galaxy what happened when you pushed the wrong species too far. From now on, the galaxy would operate by human rules, built on human principles, and governed by human authority. The elder races had taught humanity many things over the decades, but the most important lesson had been this: power belongs to those strong enough to take it and wise enough to keep it. The galaxy had pushed humanity too far. Now they would live with the consequences forever.